Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to Retention Chronicles. Super excited for our guest today. Stephanie, I should have asked you this before we got on the call, but do you prefer Stephanie or Steph?
Steph, please. Way
Okay.
less formal.
Okay, love it. Okay. Super excited to have you here, Steph. It's going to be a great recording. I know I've been looking forward to this for a while. So if you could say hi, give your intro, just like a short little brief background for our listeners, that would be great.
Absolutely. So it's so nice to meet you in person, which has been so nice, or as close to in person as possible. And I will give a brief TLDR on me. My background started in the movement and dance space, and that just led my focus to be obsessively on how we move impacts the way we feel. Fast forward to my job in film. I was on the road. I would work on marketing pieces for companies like Red Bull, Patagonia, and the North Face, via the parent company and main company that I was working for. And that led me to an increased amount of frustration over how I just could not bring my products with me. So I was buying single-use plastic, leaving products I actually needed behind, and at the end of the day, carrying everything in giant plastic bags that made me feel very cluttered and clunky, on top of being hypocritical for using so much waste. And all of this really came to a head with the realization that my routines were just a few of the many routines that were out there. So I was on the road and I would talk to parents who had to pack for their kids, but also had an amazing sense of style and didn't want to give that up just because they had to spend a lot of time getting organized, right? Or how people bring their medication with them or organize their kitchen. So the idea of routines at home that we wish we could do better and also wish we could bring on the go with us really became my focal point. And from that point on, it was just, how do I solve my own problem to start with? And so that really began Cadence. So at the end of the day, what we are is we solve problems we feel like are worth solving, and we solve them through innovation, through product systems. So our first solved problem was, how do you travel and leave your home, whether it's for a day or a month, with your personal care routine in a way that feels incredibly beautiful, is something you trust first and foremost, right? No leaking, exploding products.
Yeah, that's like the absolute worst.
Yeah, and just really enables you to be in the moment, right? Like our whole mission is like bring you calm and control no matter where you are or what you're doing, so you can be more present, focused, and appreciative of the moment that you're in.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you brought up like having your routine at home and still being able to like use Cadence while you're at home. Like it's not even like while you're on the go, right? It's like just part of your routine that you adopt in, because it's like, okay, I know I can take these like capsules with me whenever I'm traveling, but like also the aspect of being able to like get used to or like add this to your routine is like fascinating to me, because like I have, right, like my bottles and everything, but it does feel like chaotic when I'm trying to like pack and I'm like thinking through, I'm like, okay, what do I need? And then it's like in that moment I'm thinking about, okay, I need all my essentials, but like more often than not, I'm missing one of them when I get there, right? And I'm like, oh my God, like, how could I have forgotten this or something? And it's just in the spur of the moment. You're not going through your routine right then and there when you're packing. So it's like easy to slip your mind if you don't have a list or something, which I'm not like a list person when I pack, which is maybe what this is telling me I need to do. But like that exact moment is, or like that thinking through that process is really like curious to me, because I've never, until kind of being introduced to like Cadence and thinking through like what I wanted to ask you, I was like, that's a really interesting aspect where it's like before you start to pack.
Yes, and the beauty of the Cadence capsules, with them all being magnetic, connective, and labeled, it's your packing list. That was one of the things that was most exciting back when we were prototyping and utilizing our early versions of the product before we launched was I recognized it was essentially a physical packing list, because you're right. You said it perfectly. You don't do your entire morning and night routine when you're packing. You can maybe do 50% of it. The capsules, you just grab them all and you bring them with you, or you can quickly eliminate the ones you don't need, right? So it's like a physical manifestation of something that is right in front of your face. And the goal always has been keep them out on the shelf, right? Because they're beautifully stacked. They're this honeycomb, or you can make them whatever shape you want because they're interlocking and interconnecting. They are beautiful enough to leave out there. So it's not something you're digging around in your closet, right? That you haven't used since your last trip, and they're dusty and you're like, oh, is this clean? Is this dirty? Was this my shampoo or my cleanser, right? That's such a negative experience. It does not make me want to put my expensive moisturizer and serum into that bottle. So the whole point, yes, is that it's out on the shelf. It's beautiful, whether it's there for art or function, and then you just whisk it away wherever you're going without too much thought and time put into packing.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up the point of like not putting, like, not sure if they're clean or dirty, because I feel like everyone knows like those little travel bottles, right, that you buy at whatever CVS, wherever. And it's so funny because it's always like, okay, when I get home, I'm gonna clean these, right? Like I'm gonna make sure they're so well taken care of. And then you get home and you're exhausted, and then you're like, I like clean it out. And then next time it comes around, you're like, where are those little things? Like I don't even know where I put them, like how I clean them. It's like a disaster because you don't touch them until you're going to go travel and like you need them again, versus Cadence, you're able to, like you said, incorporate into your daily routine.
Yes. Yes, exactly. The material we chose was so specific so that the efficacy of whatever you put inside stays the same as if it were in its original parent bottle.
Oh, that's okay. That's super interesting. Can we talk about that like a little? Because I don't know like anything about this industry, right? Like
Yeah.
anything about like product design and whatnot. So it's always fascinating for me to get the time to like sit down and like walk through some of those details that might not have made it on the site, right? So like, how are you going through and testing, like making sure that the efficacy stays true no matter what's in the bottle?
Yes, the number one thing is the seal. We have an industrial
Mm.
seal on the capsule. So if you think about most travel bottles, it's one of those closures where there's a hinge and it just clicks shut. That's
Yeah.
not truly airtight and sealed. Our products are completely airtight. You could submerge them in water, nothing is getting through. So that's one of the facets of how our capsules are leak proof. It is 3 rotations of the cap, and that cranks down on an industrial seal that we have, which makes it so that there's no air leaking out and that product inside is really protected. And we were able to do that while still having a material mix that we could be proud of. It's 20% recycled ocean-bound plastic, 30% regrind from our manufacturing process, and the rest is virgin material, so that we can really have a product that lasts for the ages and is truly durable. But those are a number of the elements that went into making a product so protective of whatever anyone can throw inside.
Okay. Super interesting. Yeah. Cause I'm like, cause I know just from being familiar with Cadence, obviously the material like ratio that you just described, of like the intentionality to have a material that you're proud of, and that is helping take away some of our issues around plastic and helping with sustainability. But then I was also thinking, I was like, how do you try and make sure that like you're finding the balance between what you want the quality of the product to be and making sure that it matches like the mission of Cadence. So it's like I would imagine like a fine dance between the two, that you probably were like testing every little iteration until you found the perfect mix.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it was. The ocean-bound material we use, which is from a company, Envision Plastics. I always like to shout it out because it took me 6 months to find a
Find them.
supplier who would work with us, and they were phenomenal. Worked with us when we were pre-launch. And I feel like, it's our job as brands that have been out there in the world to spread it to other folks starting companies. So Envision Plastics is amazing. And that material is not even made for the type of manufacturing process we're using. We have just modified our manufacturing process in such a way, because our product design is so unique. We've also been able to find a way to manufacture with that material because it is post-consumer. And at the same time, had to figure out that exact fine line between, okay, when do you use so much of this where then the product isn't made for life anymore, versus, of course, we don't want to be making 100% virgin plastic products ever. So our goal as a company is always iterating, always getting better. It never stops. And so we're proud of where we are, but we're always focused on how we can do better and how we can do more.
Yeah, I think that's really admirable. And I think that comes through in your branding, which I want to talk about a little bit later. But before we do, while we're talking about product iteration, for anyone that hasn't seen the capsules, like you have this little like clickable like label that you can put on the top. And we kind of referenced it earlier, but I realized I was like, if someone hasn't seen Cadence, they might not be able to track. So like you can like swap out the little tiles on top. And I think is it a magnet that holds them in there?
Yeah, super seamless, no indents or anything, just magnetic.
Yes. So how was like that process in terms of like making sure that the seal and the plastic and every other component works well with like now this added magnet and label? And was that part of like the original like thought process? Because I feel like that's something that's like so unique. Like usually it's just like a label, right? It's already pre-printed, like you can't switch them out. So how did you come to that conclusion?
Yeah, so the sides of the capsule, for anyone listening, the sides of the capsules are all magnetic, and then there's the label that we're talking about that is also magnetic. That has been part of the design from day one, and everyone told me I was crazy.
I'm
How
sure.
how can we infuse this in a beautiful, seamless way? I mean, people were throwing out wild things like Velcro. Who wants
Velcro.
Velcro in their travel bottles, right?
Going
But so
back to
for
like the
us,
80s.
right? But we're not a container company. We are a product innovation company that is tackling this very big problem. And we knew we just shouldn't even try and solve it if we couldn't come up with a amazing, never before done solution. And so the impact of that connectivity is so massive, and something where you kind of have to see it before and after to really feel it. But it's almost like, this is a wild example, but if you stuck your hand into a jar of dry rice, all
Uh-huh.
those rice grains would flow through your fingers like water, versus picking up a rice cake. It is together
Mm.
and it's with one hand, right? If we took all of our products and removed the aspects of them that connected them, it would feel terrible. You wouldn't be able to pick it up with one hand. You would be knocking these lightweight little plastic bottles all over, versus making all of our capsules magnetic, hexagonal. I mean, you're picking up a system. It's an entity. They're not going all over. You stick your hand into your bag. You're not fishing around for things. So much of it was this focus on what is the movement that I, as a human being, need to do when I'm interacting with this product. And whatever it needs to be should make me feel more calm inside than
More
chaotic.
chaotic. Yeah. Yeah, because I can imagine, like, I feel like too, it's kind of like a I feel like you could see it in a movie, but like someone's like rushing to like make their flight or something and like knocking over their bottles, like they're getting knocked into like the sink, the
Yes.
toilet, like the floor, everywhere, right? Like, and then or like they're just being tossed in a bag or a suitcase or a toiletry bag, whatever. And they're just like, you're trying to scour to find them. But it is so nice that you can just like you said, great metaphor, by the way, as well, with the rice and the rice cake,
Thank
that
you.
you're able to just like in one fall swoop, get it and do whatever you need to do.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, I will be your hype person, believe me. Okay, so I know we've been obviously talking about product design and whatnot. And you gave a background to like how your background influenced where you went with Cadence, but I always love talking about branding. And so how did you take like your background with movement and how that influences your daily routine, and then start to think through what you wanted the branding and the messaging to be for other people who are going to be, you know, interacting with Cadence?
Absolutely. You know, the brand and the product were developed at the same time, both with lots
Mm,
of love. I was working my full-time job at the time and working consulting gigs on the side. So it was a labor of love on nights and weekends. And
doing the thing.
yeah, I mean, I think one of the best parts about building a business is you get to do it, you get to be inspired by all the things you wish were done differently, whether it's in life, whether it's in the place you work, and you're able to make good from all of it. And so the brand really came from a place of, I wish there was something beautiful out there that was in this category. In this category, it was almost like rewinding to pre-reusable water bottles, right? Like there was a time
Mm,
when no one was walking around with swells and hydro flasks, and we were all carrying, not me, before our time,
yeah.
we were walking around with Poland Spring bottles or whatever it may be. And then
Hmm.
suddenly the shift happened where people recognize, wow, I'm using so much single-use plastic, and I'm honestly spending a lot more money throwing all of this out, all this single-use plastic out. I will invest in a $40, $50 bottle, but not just because it's reusable, though that's a big part. And I would hope that's why people switch over to
Yeah,
reusable
right.
bottles, but also because it's more beautiful, because it's in the color that I like and it's shaped nice and it makes me feel good when I, whether I go to my yoga class or I'm going to work or, sitting at the park. And that transition had not happened for this space at all, right? Like
Mm,
we had transitioned into a world where we're actively taking time to develop our personal care routines, the things that make us feel us, investing into those routines, right? But then when it would come time to transport that, we were then faced with a $3 plastic bottle, not manufactured well, not something that's going to last you. And then that's kind of where things start to implode. And so it was a really cool opportunity as a brand to say, I'm going to be the first brand in this space. We're going to make a brand that actually has heart to it, that cares about the world. And most importantly, I always want to emphasize this, has a product that backs up everything that the brand means.
mm.
I think there are a lot of companies, which is a totally different business model. And one that I'm aware of that are really focused just on building the brand. They take a product that kind of exists and remake it for that particular brand. We felt, and I felt it was so important that if we were going to do this, it had to be both. If we could make a beautiful brand, but not develop a product that actually changed the way things were, then there's really no point in existing and being, and, vice versa. So I strive to have a brand that feels very human and
Mm.
has quirky parts to it that will hopefully never go away. I feel like that's part of the magic of following a brand from the early days, and I see it go away so often. And so that's my mission constantly, is how can we keep up the part of us as we grow and build that is heartfelt, that we do things just because it makes people happy and puts a smile on their face, right? So we're very much about the long-term ROI in every decision that we make.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I love that you drew the distinction of like having a brand with a product that backs up that branding and like makes sense. Um, and I'm curious to, if you off the top of your head, like what would you say is like the quirkiest thing that Cadence does? Like I'm just curious because you're talking about that. And then a follow-up question to that as well is, why do you think brands start to lose that quirky aspect um once they start to like get bigger or have other stakeholders who are driving the force? So two-parter for you.
Okay. Great question. For us, it's probably, and this isn't too quirky, but we like showing the behind the scenes of our team in
Mm,
our different little hubs. We have a tiny innovation center in Montana. We have an innovation center in Brooklyn. And then we have a fulfillment center in upstate New York. So it's everything from, the basketball court in our fulfillment center, or our
so
ping
fun.
pong table, to our development process, which, we get pretty fun with on the design side. So I love it when I see the people behind the brand, but not in an overly curated way. Like, I just want to know, like, what's the
What are they
energy
doing?
like in the office? Yeah, what, like, I just want to know there's thought going into the things I'm buying. And so that's why we like putting our BTS out there, because we're not like outsourcing the design to someone else. We are here till 11 p.m. on a Friday because we're so excited and into obsessing over this one small detail of the product we're making. So
Mm-hmm.
BTS, though, I wouldn't say that's too quirky, but I love it.
But it's
And
so fun.
then
Yeah.
and then the second part of your question was, why do brands lose that like feeling of loyalty from
Mm-hmm.
customers? I think it's because, well, probably unpopular opinion, but I think it's a compounding impact of decisions made early on. For
Mm.
example, we have been really careful with what investment we've taken. Most of our investment is from boutique firms, the right folks, and a majority of founders. So people who are invested in building something different versus, of course, there are firms out there who, and it's their business model. It's truly not negative, but you go into it knowing that these folks want their money back in 5 years.
Mm.
That's not how, that means you cannot make decisions that are going to make an impact 7.5, 9, 10 years down the line, because that's not what you're building for. You're building
Yeah.
for an immediate, fast exit. That's not to say that companies cannot, build a great brand and have an incredible business prospect. I mean, not at all, but it's about what the expectation is. Is it about having a really successful exit while also making sure you're doing it with the right company at the right time and with the right investors? I mean, it's all, of course, not black and white, but I think brands lose it because you stop doing the thing that's going to buy that long-term experience, right? Like
Mm.
we are so conscious of that. What is that? At New Year's, that non-alcoholic spritz drink. What is that called?
Oh,
Martinelli's.
oh, there. Yeah.
Martinelli's for years had a beautiful tinfoil wrapper, like a traditional champagne bottle.
Mm.
It's iconic. It's like what makes you feel like you're drinking this non-alcoholic apple
Right.
juice, but it makes it feel
It's an
special.
experience. Yeah. It's like
Yes,
part of why you want to get champagne, honestly.
exactly. And they removed it, right? Because it cost a little bit more. It's more sense towards your cost of goods. But like, what is Martinelli's without that? You like that my moment of joy is removed.
Yeah.
So it's things like that brands do, and they're so focused on the immediate bottom line that removes the feeling of care
Mm.
that someone would have. There are very few brands that I've followed from the beginning that I still have heart for now. And it's all because of decisions and reasons like that. To end on a positive note to this answer, I like brands like Patagonia do it right, because I
Mhm.
know that they are constantly investing in being better, both for product and for the world. I am like, you will take all my money. I will always go to you, even though you are a large brand and corporation, because I know that you're constantly working on yourself. But I actually believe you in what you're saying versus the opposite, which happens to a lot of brands.
I love that you bring in like the positive example of Patagonia as well. And I think it's also like we talk a lot about, obviously we're in the post-purchase space. And so we're talking a lot about like buying behavior and keeping the customer excited while they're waiting for their product. And it comes up like a couple, like, every so often, but like buyer's remorse or like guilt around purchasing something, especially when you don't immediately have it in hand, like you do in retail. Like you're not walking away where it's a direct transaction where you see your money, is given to someone else and then you have a product in hand. And so it kind of like, it also for me ties into like what brands I'm purchasing from and if I like what their mission, what their branding, what they stand for is all about. And also like, how does purchasing from them make me feel? And if it makes me feel good, then obviously it's a better customer experience and I'm more likely to go back, but it just simply feels good. Like that's a point enough for me to go back. Like you can dive into the psychology of it all. And that's what my background was in. So like, I'm always fascinated by that.
Yeah.
But like, just for a consumer standpoint where I'm able to say like Patagonia, like I'm the same way where I'm like, if I see their brand name versus competitors, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go with them because I like them better. And I like their branding and their mission. And I can recognize it for what they are. Versus other people that I don't know about, or it doesn't have the same connection, or what's the word I'm looking for? The same connotation of the branding that Patagonia or these other brands that have stayed loyal. And like they, in my eyes, like they made their mark off of being different because they were doing so many things that were for the betterment of the world, for the betterment of the environment, kind of before thinking about like their parties or their stakeholders getting rich. And it's great because they happen to do both, right? They're a huge corporation, but it makes you feel better as the consumer to like have that narrative in your head rather than, like fast fashion or things that are not helping our world, but really hindering it.
Mm. Yes, exactly. You can build a great business that is a fundamentally strong, excellent business, and at the same time doing it in a way that's better for the world and keeps your promises. That's the hardest trio in the world, but one that we are constantly aiming for.
Yeah. And it to me, at least from an outsider perspective, it seems like you all are able to do that, like you said, because you made those decisions early on that enable you later to still stay true to your branding. But I also feel like because you specifically, you're aware of that and like have seen other brands go through that, as a founder to like protect against it as well, right? Where you're able to bring in your own experience from the brands that you follow or the brands that you like or the brands that you've seen and be like, I know that it's really important for me not to do that. And like, it's a different business model, right? Like you said, but it's not the model that I want to work with Cadence.
Absolutely. And it really takes the whole team to do that, right? It starts with the founder, but I'm very lucky to have the team that I do, especially in areas that are all about efficiency, right? I am
Mm.
so lucky that we have the ops team that we do. They are constantly running with our design team, going above and beyond. I mean, the things I ask them to do, we have a big launch coming up.
Ooh.
And the things that I've asked them to do, they look at me on Zoom like I have 5 heads. And I'm like, but imagine how good it's going to feel when someone gets this. And they know it, they feel it.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, we're going to make it happen. But again, it is all because of having people who are excited to build differently while also making it as efficient as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But having folks who can go, okay, I understand the nuance of all of this, and we're going to have fun while building it.
Yeah. That I love that you brought that other piece in, that other side, because obviously you want to have efficiency, and having a great team to lead and guide you through that is everything, right? Like I I love also that you told the story of like they're like, what do you want us to do? But that's so relatable because you're like, I know you can feel it too, and like you can feel the difference that'll make. That's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, if we're thinking about efficiency, right? Like all of our products are custom. We
Mhm.
can't pre-pack anything.
Oh
Most
yeah.
people buy our Build Your 6 or Build Your 12 on our website. That is completely custom picking and packing and lasering and engraving of all of the labels that people choose, right? Someone would come and say, that's not efficient. Why do you just sell preset bundles? And while we do sell preset bundles, we always wanted customization to be at the front and center. And I think that's why, again, that's why people come to us,
Hmm.
because we know that people's routines can be 4 products or they can be 18 products. People buy like 24 capsules from us sometimes because they have a
Wow.
giant supplement routine. They want to carry their jewelry. They want their skincare, hair care, and body care, and then they want to buy a set for their kids, right? If we were to say, here's a pack of 4 and a pack of 8, you would just feel like, well, I'm trying to fit myself into this product versus the way it really should be, which is like, we fit around you. So efficiency in the right places is great, but it has to be in the right places.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I didn't even think about how, every or like most packages that you're dealing with are custom made because of your ability to obviously label and like you said, match the routine or match the product to your routine. So that's like crazy. That's a whole, I feel like we could talk about that, like how you even get through that with a whole other episode. But I do want to ask, like, so do you know off the top of your head like what the division might be between people who are getting like those pre-packaged or pre-bundled sets, and then people who are completely making like their packs of 24 or their packs of 18? Do you know like the breakdown between the customer profiles?
Yeah, so our Build Your 6 and Build Your 12 are all customizable. Like you can choose your color, you can choose your label, and then you can add individual capsules on top of that. So it's kind of like a base set, if you will.
Okay.
And 90% of our orders are people customizing. They don't want to just buy something that's pre-labeled, even though they're really buying the same things everyone else is for the most part. And that's data that helps us make sure we're giving people exactly what they need for their routines. But people want the breadth and width and room to customize and build for themselves.
Okay. That's really interesting. That's higher than I thought. I would have thought it was maybe like 80-20 or like 70-30. But wow, that's impressive. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about branding and just honestly like everything under the sun, I feel like. But I want to talk about like social media marketing strategy because you guys have a huge following. So can you walk us through, how you and your team are approaching, like you have your branding, how are you sharing it with the world?
Yes. So we are predominantly on Instagram, TikTok. We do YouTube shorts. It's where we've spent the majority of our focus. We also, are constantly building a really heartfelt and robust community. The data we have, most folks hear about us from word of mouth first and paid media second, which is something we're proud of.
That's awesome.
And thank you. And it's funny when I think about a social media strategy, there are, of course, these little things that matter, but at the end of the day, what I really think matters is to actually be thoughtful about it, which sounds like such subjective woo-woo advice. But like, I look at our captions before they go up. I look at our feed. We have an amazing creative team and an amazing brand team. But I think a founder's job a lot of the time is to be that set of eyes that pushes everyone and everything a little bit, right? Does it actually feel good? Or what about this wild idea? And of course, that's the gift you get when you're not completely in the weeds all the time working on something. So it's a huge team effort. But I look at it and I feel like you can tell. Like I can tell when I land on an Instagram page and I'm like, wow, like this was really thoughtfully put together and I'm really invested into this brand and product, versus when you see something and you're like, there's just something missing. It's like when you meet a person, right? And you have an immediate warmth and connection to them versus someone who they're not a bad person. They're maybe just not your person, or they're busy or they're distracted, right? You can tell when someone's busy and distracted. I feel like it's the same thing for social media and all marketing. It's I'll see a subject line that our amazing copywriter has written and I'll be like, what about just tweaking this a little bit? Or I feel like this feels a little bit too like we're marketing to someone. Would we really say that? So I feel like the trick is actually caring and not being afraid to spend the time to get it right. We spend the time. If we do anything, which is a weakness and a strength always, right? Your greatest strength is also your Achilles heel, but we're meticulous in everything we do, down to the ad copy to the TikTok caption.
Okay. I love that. Yeah. It could be a double-edged sword for sure. That's very relatable. What would you say, like, what are things that like stick out to you in terms of like how to be intentional and thoughtful when like writing those captions? Like it can be like more like tactical advice or higher level. Because I think like for me, what always sticks out is like something that seems or like someone that's able to convey like relevancy to like what's going on in the world or like what's trending or like a holiday, right? Like seasonality plays into it. And that's always like when someone gets like punny, like that's what stands out to me. Of like someone being like, oh, like you were able to like think through this and just be like a little something extra, just like to catch your eye. So what kind of like catches your eye when you're going through a feed?
Mm. I think, of course, the product first and foremost, right? If it's a product I'm not interested in, I'm not going to spend a lot of
Mm.
time on it. I think product is usually the answer to a lot of my questions about marketing. I
Yeah.
think you could have an amazing product, and if you don't have a great like team behind it, that is a very tough place to be in. But even if you have a great team and the product is not great, it will be short-lived. And
Mm.
so I think it really comes down to product, right? We have the gift of having a product that is very unique and people have not seen it before, right? Hexagonal magnetic capsule system is not something that has
It's not the
existed
day to day. Yeah.
before. And so it helps a lot when people are like, wait, what is that? I haven't seen that. That looks really beautiful. And they, then click in and explore. And we feel like, how can we fit in to the moment, but let's not change what we're doing for the moment, right?
Hmm.
I think we have a very unique marketing philosophy and that most of the things that we do are quite evergreen. It's
Mm.
not about this is trending, so let's do it. Like it will go out of trend and then you will be out of trend. So as we built Cadence and designed the product, a big mission for us is how can we think about things that are timeless and how can we infuse that into everything that we do? And believe me, sometimes we get it wrong and sometimes we get it right. And it's just about following your gut. Again, a little bit of woo-woo advice, but hopefully if this helps even one person, it would maybe pop into their head at a moment where they're about to approve something that they feel like they maybe want to say something about, but everyone's ready to ship it out and no one's saying anything. I feel like it's those moments where you want to say it, but it's a little stuck into your chest and you're like, is it a big deal? And maybe 80% of the time it's not a big deal, but I really don't live by the philosophy 80% and it's fine.
Hmm.
Again, certainly there are
Yeah.
times, but if you have that mindset most of the time, that's the feeling your brand is going to give. That it's like, it's okay. It's average. It's
Like it
like not
makes it
anything.
by.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it makes it by. It's not bad, but is it something that, I think of certain brands and like their captions like are really funny. You're like,
Mhm.
wow, there's a very funny person behind this. And I like this, right? Like
Yeah.
that's clever. It's smart.
Hmm.
And so I think it's just those moments where you take the time and invest the time and you're willing to be like, I know we like looked at this 3 times already, but we just need to pause in this for one more second. Like one small word can change everything.
Yeah. And like how you're delivering something too. I think like when I think of like clever, I think is the best word to describe what stands out to me. So I love that you emphasize that because I was like, I think of puns and that's more like silly, but like clever, like something that like makes me laugh or like chuckle. I'm like, oh, you got me. Like that's where it stands out. And I think that happens a lot on Twitter too. Like I see that all the time. And of course it happens on Instagram, TikTok. And we talk about those platforms the most, like Instagram, TikTok. But like some people who are just able, like I'm like, wow, they're thinking through it. And like it's just so simple. Even if you're saying like the same words or you're conveying the same message, like even the way you put the words can like be a different way to deliver it. So it is, I love that you bring up like the 80%. Like you could send it and it'd be fine. But to like get that extra emphasis to play into like the branding and how people are interacting. And like when they think about Cadence, they're like, oh, those are like intentional captions. How someone wrote that is clever is like the added bit that I feel like is hard to achieve, but also you're able to achieve it just with having a lot of great like talent collaboration, and like not being scared to speak up and say, hey, like this kind of feels like we could change this, like even if we just took a couple more minutes to like think about it. Because I know when I think about our social media, we're like thinking about like, okay, like this is like the copy, this is the idea, like how am I trying to convey it? And then like a couple back and forth where it's like, okay, what about this one, what about this one? Oh no, like I like that phrasing of the same thing better because it just sits better with us.
Yes, 100%. I mean, the things that get approved are wild sometimes. There have been planes that have had a letter missing on the side of it, right? Like someone approved that.
Yeah.
So, I laugh when I think about it because it's such high level advice. But like, if you think about it in that context, someone didn't speak up. Someone was like, is this intentional? Because that you're missing a letter in the name you're about to put on the side of your giant plane. And
Hmm.
someone didn't say anything, and then it happens, right? So it's just the thing that I think about before shipping anything.
Yeah, it's like someone in that room is like, am I missing a trend? Like, and is like too maybe embarrassed to say like,
Yes.
it's not spelled right. Like, yeah, it's easy to get in the mentality of like the bandwagon effect where it's like, okay, everyone or like bystander, like everyone else is doing it, everyone else says it's fine, so I guess I shouldn't say something. But meanwhile, everyone's like thinking the same thing. So yeah, just wild examples with the airplane one or like things that are just so, you know, irreversible, it seems like, or like such a big decision to be made and then something goes awry. But as we're talking about like social media and marketing, of course this is retention chronicles, so we always have to bring it back to retention. How do you see kind of like everything we've talked about, so like having a great product, having branding that stays true from like start until present day, social media, how does that all wrap into how you think about retention on the day to day?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's a perfect lead in because retention is best incurred by folks who fall in love with what's in their hands
Mm-hmm.
and with every touch point and interaction that they've had, right? From the web experience, no, actually, from the first ad they saw to the email that they got that felt kind of heartfelt, and then to the web experience that felt truly beautiful and genuine, the checkout experience, the email journey, keeping them in the loop along the way as their product is being sent to them, to the packaging experience, and of course, then the product in hand. To me, every moment, every investment in something quirky or extra or heartfelt adds a dollar to the loyalty bucket, right? Every time someone's order gets messed up by, I don't know, whatever shipping provider we're using, because it is life and things happen, do we get back to them in a week, or no, we get back to them in 12 hours. We say, even though this wasn't our fault, like we're going to figure out how to make this right with you. Oh my God, you have your honeymoon tomorrow. All right, we're going to Uber this to your apartment in New York. And we're going to make sure you're on that plane with these products that are going to make you feel more calm and happy ASAP, right? Like that's retention. That's how we think about retention, is like, how can we make folks have dinner table conversations? And then of course, how can we make the product so good? And I know I keep coming back to product, but again, I feel like the product is truly the foundation. It's the legs for everything else that then makes people go, oh my God, we get people, for us, for example, saying, wow, I bought these for my vacation, but I didn't even realize that these could make remembering to take my supplements every day better. And I'm going to throw out that Monday through Sunday pill case. I'm going to
Yeah.
replace it with something where I don't have to take this giant thing with me. I can like pull one and pop it in my bag for the day and remember to take the thing that I want to take. So I'm going to come back and buy some more because the product was so much better than I even expected it to be, right? People just want something that doesn't leak and explode, but instead we give them something that feels good in your hand and, makes you excited to use the product inside. And then that's what gets them to come back. So I know I sound like a broken record, but that's
No, I love
how we
it.
think about it.
It's like something like that quote. It's like you have to hear something like 10 times for it to settle in. Like I'm also an optimist at heart, so I can like find the good in a lot of things. But that honeymoon example, oh my gosh, that like just got my heart racing. Like I can't even imagine those real world examples that come into your CS team where it's like, oh my God, my product, like it whatever, for whatever reason, if it's like a shipment delay, like isn't gonna come and my honeymoon is tomorrow. Like that is wow. Um, hearts out to like anyone who is going through that. But I love what you said about also being able to like have your product keep someone accountable and like taking their supplements. Like that's just such a awesome way to like switch up. I feel like how we normally try and keep ourselves accountable. Like me, it's like trying to set alarms or reminders on my phone, and like, you know, they get like shushed all the time because I'm like, I have so many. So yeah, that's really cool that that's also like another use case that I wouldn't have thought of just like by looking at the product until like interacting with it. And then you're like, oh wait, like there's so many different ways that I can take this and apply it to my life outside of what like I originally bought it for.
Well, I always appreciate hearing that. And it's something we're excited to be a part of all aspects of people's lives.
Yeah, I love it that you have to just bring their cadence along and you guys get to go with them. Oh my gosh, that's so fun. Well, I know I feel like this hour is like flown by. But I have one final question for you, and that is, what is like one piece of advice that you would like to impart that maybe we haven't gotten to share yet, or maybe we have and you really want to drive that point home? It can be like tactical or high level, super related to like funding your own business, or it can be related to just life in general. It's a
I want
heavy
to give you a
hitter.
good one.
Give me something I haven't heard. No.
I will. I promise this time. What I will say is one of the biggest things that our team has been excited about is the way we've structured our days. My background too is in psych. I was a psych major back in the day, and I did my thesis on flow, the state of flow in
Okay. Oh
extreme
my gosh.
athletes, but how to then take that state into regular everyday life. So I'm a bit maniacal about making sure our team has time to actually do the thing that A, they love doing, B, they're really good at, and C, they're here to do. I think it's really easy to get into this like meetings sprinkled throughout the day, meetings that could be half the time and done over email instead, right? So we do no meeting Mondays, no meeting Fridays, and deep work time every day from whatever time people start working to 12 or 1 p.m. We're a remote team. So we have some night owls on our team. So we have some morning birds. So whenever someone chooses to begin, really we all have different Slack emojis and statuses, which is a very fun part of it.
That's so fun.
It'll be like, call us if it's an emergency, otherwise deep work until, 1 p.m. And it's been hard. At first, the team was not bought in. I had to push our leadership team on this one. I was like, promise you will be happy with it. And it really helps make sure when we do have meetings, everyone's prepared, setting things ahead of time. And we're excited to talk. I love our team is incredible. We have such amazing human beings on our team. And I think we all get excited to chat, but it makes it even more exciting to connect because it feels very intentional.
Yeah, I love that. That isn't something I've heard yet. And I said that only like other guests, not with you. I will always hear anything. If you want to repeat it 10,000 times, but I love that. I'm also shocked that we didn't find this out earlier, that both of our backgrounds are in psychology, like the state of flow. So interesting. I like studied neuroscience, and so very just super tapped into all that. So I might have been on that train way quicker than it sounds like your team.
Yes.
Was
yes.
on that. But I might have to take like the Slack emojis to our team because I love that. Oh my gosh, that is so fun.
Yeah, I did not know those fun Slack emojis existed until recently, and we have so much fun with it as a team. Those wild, wild emojis you can upload to Slack. We have the best time with them, and it really helps add to the camaraderie over Zoom since we don't get the pleasure of being together all the time.
Yeah, it just elevates, right? I love Slack so much. Like, oh, I could go on a whole other rant about that and just like reacting to things and editing messages and whatnot. So I love that. And I hope other people start to just have all those animals next to their names and whatnot. But this has been so, so, so wonderful to chat with you, Steph. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come share your expertise and really just like be able to impart your knowledge, your learnings with our listeners. Cause it makes my day to have these conversations. So thank you.
Oh, of course. Well, thanks so much for having me. This was a really fun conversation, a great way to begin to close out Friday.
Oh, I'm so excited to hear that. That makes my day.